Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know that you're aware of the crisis in the military's privatized housing program. The private companies that were put in charge of managing military housing failed to provide safe and clean homes to military families. Nonetheless, they managed to rake in millions of dollars in profits. And the services have fallen short in their oversight responsibilities by allowing military families to live in hazardous and unhealthy conditions. I want to focus this morning on just one part of that problem. When repairs to military housing are either poorly made or not made at all, it can threaten the health of service members and their families. We now know that many of them have developed chronic medical conditions from exposure to mold, lead paint, and other hazards. So I want to ask both of you, as a matter of principle, do you think the United States government has the responsibility to cover the lifetime costs of treating service members and their families for health problems that are connected to unsafe military housing? General Milley, maybe I should start with you.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And Secretary Esper?
Yes, ma'am, but frankly, I'd like to see the companies pay first.
Well, I'm fine with that. But I want to know whether or not the military should be on the hook, whether or not the federal government should be on the hook for its failure to having supervised
Yes,
those
ma'am,
companies.
I agree. For that reason, I agree.
Good.
And to that extent, Senator, we have established, we are establishing a housing registry to make sure that, A, we know all the houses that have had any life, health, or safety issues, lead, asbestos, or whatever, to include mold. And we want to make sure that we backtrack as many years as it takes to go back and make sure that we know the names of all of those inhabitants of those houses, both adults and children, and we want to track them throughout their life. And if at any point in time in the future they have a serious health issue that can be directly related, cause and effect, to having lived in that house, it is our belief that the federal government and the RCI partner should be on the hook for the payment of that.
Good. I'm very glad to hear this. This is very reassuring. I also want to make sure that we memorialize this in law. I am introducing a broader military housing reform bill that will ensure that no member of the military or a military family will have to pay for medical care as a result of unsafe housing. When a service member or that service member's child or spouse gets sick because the military failed to hold these companies accountable, then it is time for the military to step up and fix the problem. That means making sure this never happens again and paying the ongoing medical bills. So thank you. I want to take my remaining time and ask a critical question about readiness facing the Army climate change. The Defense Department's most recent report on climate change discussed the impact of this human-caused problem on our military operations and bases. This report included a statement by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dunford, who said, and I'm going to quote here, "When I look at climate change, it's in the category of sources of conflict around the world and things we'd have to respond to." General Milley, just a simple yes or no is fine because I'll have some follow-up questions. Do you agree with General Dunford?
I do, Senator.
Good.
If I could just make an additional
Sure.
comment. I think what we're talking about here are the effects, the potential effects of climate change. And clearly there'll be military implications as well as other implications down the
Good.
road.
So is adapting to climate change necessary for Army readiness?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by adapting to climate change.
Well, taking this into account as you're thinking
Of course,
about the
it's a
readiness.
consideration.
Good.
For example, there could be resource shortfalls in various parts of the world, which will increase stress on the society, which could increase insurgency, revolution, terrorism, or a wide variety of other factors. So there's a variety of effects that would have to take into consideration.
So do you think it would be prudent for the Army to incorporate climate change into operational and strategic planning?
We already do.
Good. And how would you rate Army installations as a whole in terms of their climate change resiliency?
That is a work in progress. And so we're evaluating those and coming up with the list. There's some, the Army is, by its nature, is more inland than on the coast. So the climate change as it affects some of the Army installations varies. The coastal ones tend to probably have greater impact, but that doesn't mean the ones on the interior of the country don't. So we're evaluating all the variety of bases we have. We do have a list that was mentioned earlier by one of the senators. We do have a list, and we'll get that list promptly to the.
Good. I appreciate that. You know, it's clear that climate change is a threat to our military's infrastructure and operations, and it's critically important for the Army and other military services to incorporate climate change into their operational plans. It's a readiness issue, and I'm very glad to see that the Army takes this seriously. Thank you, General.